I spent about 4 years living like a millionaire, but I was actually broke. Let me explain. So when I started a business, I got really into the whole idea of manifestation and, creating wealth and creating the life you want. And I was, doing what I was told to do by these gurus and mentors, which was, live the life that you want to live and the life will be attracted to you. Be the person who you want to be and what you want will come to you. But the problem was, I was living in a fantasy world. I was, going out to dinner all the time. I was going on trips. I was paying mentors and PTs like hundreds of dollars a week. And what was actually happening under the surface was I was still broke. I had less than $1,000 to my name most of the time. And I was getting more and more in debt. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was living the life I wanted to live and it would be attracted to me. But boy, was I wrong. I was living in this fantasy world and I was living like these YouTubers that I was watching. I wanted to be an online coach and YouTuber, and I was living like these people that I watched and I admired. And you see these people and they're buying cars and building houses and creating lives and wearing nice clothes, and I thought all I have to do is do that and I will get the thing that I want and have the life that I want. But like I said, I had less than $1,000 to my name. What I really realized was that if you follow the examples of all these gurus and YouTubers that you follow and that you admire, you start to believe that that is reality. And what you're seeing is the way they live. But what you don't see are, number one is their actual lives, and two is where they started from. So you start thinking, oh, I should just be able to start living that life. I should just be able to go and buy a car. Now I've got a camera and I've got 5 videos on YouTube. I should just start being able to do these things, and you start living from where you want to be living in 5 years, not where you are right now. In the manifestation world, there's this idea of writing down your dream life. Where do you want to be in 5 years? And you might read it every day. You might even write it out every single morning. And there's power in that, but what you're missing is the in-between point. What you're looking at is where you want to be 100 steps in the future, and what you're missing is what is 2 steps in the future, 5 steps, 10 steps in the future. It's like if you want to buy a car and you start looking at cars on Facebook Marketplace and going to dealerships and trying to find all these nice cars, even shit cars, but you haven't got $100 to your name, well, how are you gonna do that? You think the car you want is just gonna be placed in your hand by Mr. Beast when you're walking down the street one day, because that's kind of what manifestation tells us, right? The things we read and the things we consume tell us that all we have to do is believe and want and visualize, and suddenly we'll have the outcome. This is what I believed anyway, and I'm sure it's happened to a lot of other people too. But what we're missing is actually, what's the next thing for me to focus on? Maybe instead of buying the car right now, it's, okay, how can I save up the money to buy a car? Or maybe even better, how can I create a safety net? How can I save a bit of money to invest? Maybe that's the starting point, not where I want to be in 5 years' time. I hope that makes sense. And I did this for years, and every 6 to 12 months, I would look at my goals and I would be really pissed off and upset and ashamed that I hadn't reached any of my goals. But what I realized was I was trying to reach goals that were way, way too far out in my future, and I was writing down goals that my mentors and people that I admire who are 5 years ahead of me would write down. What I wasn't doing is being realistic and honest with myself as to where I am right now, and I was living in denial about all of it, It was only last year when I turned 30 that I realized that I was doing the doing without being the being. I was stacking all these bricks on top of my life to build a building without setting any foundation. And no wonder you can't build a building, because it keeps falling over because you don't have a solid foundation underneath it to make sure that it's stable, right? And it's January, and I'm sure that some of you watching this, actually I'm sure that a lot of you watching this, because you're watching this kind of content, have written down goals and have set targets for the next 12 months, maybe 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. What I'd really invite you to do is to take a minute and just look over the goals you've written down and just be really honest with yourself and really think, are these goals that are 1 step in the future, 5 steps in the future, are they 10 steps in the future, or are they 100 steps in the future? If you have less than $100 in your bank account and your goal is, I want to buy a house in the next year, I think you really have to reevaluate your goals. Maybe your actual goal is, how can I save up $1,000 so I have a safety net? If your goal is, I really want to get 10 online coaching clients, but you have never coached anyone in your life, maybe start with 1 coaching client. Or I want to lose 100 kilos, but you've never been to a gym. Maybe start with, okay, my first step is getting into a gym. And we talk about this idea of writing down your dreams and your goals. And one thing that I found really helpful is, instead of writing down goals in 5 years' time, which is helpful, gives you a direction, right? Write down a goal for 3 months time and say in 3 months time I want to have, for me personally, I want to have 30 YouTube videos. I want to have $10,000 in my safety net. And these goals are actually achievable. And by making achievable goals, you start to see more progress. You start to see more availability to the things that you want. And you start to believe in yourself more. Because for years I didn't achieve any of my goals and it's so disheartening. But if you just allow yourself to play it small, which sounds crazy, I know, and counterintuitive, and play big, go hard. Play it small and allow yourself to actually achieve something, and you're gonna get way further, way quicker than if you just live 10 years in the future. It's important that you remember that just because your goal is smaller than your mentor's goal does not mean you're any less worth it. You know, it does not mean that you're not gonna make it, or does not mean that you're not successful enough. All we have to remember is these people that are trying to sell you their course and saying, hey, if you do what I say, you'll earn $30,000 in 3 months and you'll have this and that. It's all crap, it's all bullshit, and they're just trying to sell you their courses, right? So just remember, hey, actually right now, I just need to look, okay, what is 3 months in the future? What is my long-term plan? Sure, but what is the next step I need to take? What is the next realistic thing for me to do, and the next realistic goal for me to have that I can actually achieve in the next 1 to 3 months? I really, really hope this is helpful. This is something that took me years to realize. If you like this content, I'm a new YouTube channel. I'd love it if you subscribed or dropped a like or even dropped a comment, and I hope to see you in the next video.